All right, everybody ready?
Yes, sir.
We are back momentarily on the record. Mr. Granada.
Thank you. Mr. Greer, have you had any previous dealings with Adrian Martel in the past?
No, not that I can recall.
Okay. And I want to direct your attention to what's been marked as NM21. Can you tell me, are you unit E335 or 336?
I would be unit 335. That would be my call sign at the time.
Okay.
That'd be my call.
Call sign? Sorry.
And so this exhibit, does this indicate how many calls you had that day?
I believe so, yes. It's a detailed history for unit 335.
Between the time period of 3/20/2015, 9/12, and 3/21/2015, 9/12. So that would capture your duty day.
Yes, I believe so, yes.
Okay. And how many calls does this piece of evidence indicate?
Excuse me, counsel, what exhibit?
It's 21.
21.
That would be 8, and the way I'm looking at this is the 8 on that would be 10-8. In other words, I'd be going in service, and that's 8 different dispositions.
Okay. And is it possible that you would have shown up at some different calls that aren't reflected in this printout?
Yes, there would.
Okay. And is the incident taking place at the motel that we've been discussing indicated on this printout?
1 second. Yes, it is.
And what is the reason for calling officers to that scene?
Don't believe it says. It just says location best choice in. It says type of 31, which would be a suspicious person call.
Type 31?
Yes. And then that would be a suspicious person's call.
Okay.
And it doesn't have any remarks other than it says 5474, which would be my call, or my man number, is a disposition of 8 or an in service.
Okay, and were you dispatched to this scene, or was Officer Roush?
I believe we both were.
Okay.
It says disper, which I'm assuming that says dispatched, but I'm not too sure.
Is it type 31, is that what you said?
Yes,
That's a suspicious person?
yes.
And is that an event in which you should be recording?
It just, depending on the call. I don't believe there's any actual type of call that you specifically record, just depending on if you contact anybody on that call.
Here, what?
Contact anybody on that call.
Okay. I think I'm done with questioning Mr. Greer. I can pass the witness.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Let's start with on this particular call with Adrian Martel, were you a backup or primary?
Assistant officer, backup.
So you're assisting officer.
Yes.
Now, there were a lot of questions were directed to you at the use of your tape recorders, your video camera, and you did not video this call.
No.
All right, and you are familiar with, I'm going to direct your attention to Exhibit 42.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that SOP on the use of tape and digital recorders?
Yes.
And isn't it true that the responsibility to videotape is a primary officer's responsibility?
Yes.
And if the primary officer is separated from the secondary officer, then the secondary officer has the duty to tape record and videotape, correct?
Yes.
All right, so in this particular case, you had no duty to videotape this. This was up to Officer Roush as the primary.
Yes.
And when you did activate your recorder, it was outside of Roush's vehicle when Martell was in the backseat as a in custody suspect, right?
Leading up to it.
Yes. And then you activated when you were separated, and by that I mean, was Roush talking to management, at the hotel management, and you stood by the car with the prisoner?
Yes, I stand by.
Okay. And it was at that point that you had a responsibility to tape record,
Yes.
and you fulfilled your ability to tape record?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, all right. And then it was your understanding that Roush continued tape recording or video recording while he was transporting that prisoner, correct?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to draw your attention to that same Exhibit 42, subsection B, which would list under the SOPs, the Albuquerque Standard Operating Procedures, those instances in which you are required to tape record or video record. So was Mr. Martell resisting arrest?
No.
Was he disorderly?
No.
Was he refusing to obey an officer's attempt to arrest?
No.
Was there a search warrant involved?
No.
And this was not a domestic violence call?
No, it was not.
And was there any reason for you to believe at that time, on that date, that a complaint would result from Mr. Martell
No.
or from anyone at the scene?
No.
Okay. Based on your understanding of this SOP, 1-39-1, did you fulfill your requirements for the SOP on videotaping?
Yes.
All right. Now, another thing I want to ask you about is there was a mention of you being terminated from the Albuquerque Police Department.
Yes.
And there was 15 to 18 SOP sections. Have you had an opportunity to contest the city's determination of just cause for the action they took against you?
No.
Oh. That hearing has not been set, correct?
No.
Okay. You direct your attention to Exhibit 7. Exhibit 7 is the report that Officer Roush published in this case. You indicated on direct, on direct examination that you were not listed as a witness, nor was the recruit or the cadet, Andrew Henry, not listed as a
No, it was not listed.
witness on this case. Now, the crimes charged were marijuana possession and criminal trespass. Aside from Roush, who witnessed the possession of marijuana, what other witness would be necessary to establish Mr. Martell's possession of marijuana? Just Officer Roush? Okay. And what about the criminal trespass? What witnesses would be necessary to establish criminal trespass on the part of Mr. Martell?
Officer Rush.
Okay. And who was the alleged victim in the trespass case?
Be the best choice in
And Mr. Martell is a suspect, he's listed, correct?
Yes.
Best choice is listed.
Yes.
Was there any reason, given these two charges on the offense incident, to list any other witness?
No.
Now, also, directing your attention, I think, to you indicated on direct examination that you had no use of force on Mr. Martell. In thinking about that answer, you testified also that you placed your hands on Martell's wrist.
Yes.
Based on the SOP's definition, is that considered a use of force?
Yes.
Did you believe that use of force was reasonable?
Yes, I did.
Were you continually assessing the situation to determine if more or less force was needed?
Yes.
Did you determine that more force was needed?
No.
Could you tell this hearing officer at what point you're required to notify a sergeant and have that sergeant complete a use of force form based on your training?
Would that be instances where there's a use of force, that happens, resulting in some kind of injury or something of that such, and then that's when we're going to go ahead and do the whole process of the use of force form, which would be conducted by a supervisor.
And is simply placing someone in a handhold by the wrist enough to trigger a use of force form or contact a sergeant?
No.
I'm just going to go through a list of witnesses to see, did Commander Arturo Gonzalez speak with you about this case?
No.
Did Andrew Henry speak to you about this case?
No.
Jeremy Vaughn did not
Jeremy
interview
what?
you. Jeremy Vaughn did not interview you.
No.
Now, you were with an attorney when Mr. Vaughn or Mr. Bankston asked for your interview, correct?
Yes.
And at the advice of counsel, what statement was given, if any?
No statement.
Yeah, you did give a complete and accurate statement to Internal Affairs.
Yes.
You're testifying today.
Yes.
You never spoke with Adrian Martell
No.
after the 20th of March, 2015? Did you ever speak with an individual named Derek Dwayne Sublet?
No.
Did Officer Manarino, Joe Manarino, ever speak to you or question you about this incident?
No.
Albert Garcia?
No.
John Rube?
No.
Did you not record this incident intentionally so as to avoid the discovery of your actions that day? Did you see any injuries on Mr. Martell? Do you have any boxing backgrounds?
No. Other than experience in the academy, that was it.
Now, you heard Officer Henry testify that you gave 2 full energy roundhouse punches, or what were they called?
Haymakers?
Haymakers to the side of Mr. Martell's head. Does that sound believable to you based on your experience?
No.
What would you expect an individual to react? How would you expect an individual to react if punched one time full force, haymaker style, to the temple?
Objection, calls for speculation.
If he knows.
Calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Have you ever, in the course of the academy training, been punched?
Yes.
Where?
In the
How did that feel?
bad
And was it punched bare knuckles or with a glove?
gloves.
Gloves?
Yes.
Was it full force?
I would say yes.
Did you have a physical reaction to that punch?
Yes.
Describe that to the hearing officer.
During the academy training we did our boxing, at that time I was hit in the head several times when we were boxing. My physical condition at that point would be seeing stars, feeling that I'm about to maybe not pass out, but being, I don't know what the word would be, incoherent maybe, or something of that such, where I kind of be knocked out, for the lack of better words. Kind of moving back, moving my head away from the punch, or trying to get away from the punch. Where also with that, even with the V and gloves on, I would see red spots on my face, something of that such from blunt force.
Okay. During your direct examination, you testified that, or you agreed with counsel, that you go live and not go live to record or not record things that should be or not be talked about. Could you explain that? What did you mean by, why do you not go live?
That would be when we're done contacting the subject who we're contacting, merely shutting it off because we're not having contact with that subject any further. Let's say those types of situations.
Okay. Now, do you know what the early warning detection system is?
I've heard of it, but don't recall.
Were you ever the target or the subject of an early warning detection system?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so tell us about that. I mean, is this your first use of force claim by the department against you?
Yes.
So if somebody said you were on an early warning system with the Albuquerque Police Department, well, explain to us what you know about the early warning system.
I was explained to it once prior before. I don't recall, they pretty much brushed it off and said it wasn't really anything. It was more something that the department had to do just for their backs. It wasn't really gone into depth that I can recall, so I can specifically tell you what that entitled.
Okay, so I'm going to draw your attention to Exhibit 33. Do you have that? Have you seen that before?
I don't recall seeing that.
This is the first time you've ever seen it? Has anyone ever counseled you or advised you that you were on the early intervention system?
I believe so, yes.
And was it because of use of force or excessive force claims?
No.
Can you tell the hearing officer what it was used for? How you got on this tracking system?
I don't recall why I was put on there.
Okay, so you do know that you were in a motor vehicle accident that was your fault?
Oh, yes.
Okay, and you do know that you were disciplined for not using your camera?
Yes.
And you do know that you may have been disciplined for the use of an obscenity?
Yes.
Can you think, as you sit here today, of any other discipline that you've received aside from the termination, the most recent discipline? To your knowledge, have you received 5, quote, hits in the last 12 months as of August 2014?
No.
No, less than 5.
No.
Well, less than 5 or more than 5?
Less than 5.
Less than 5, okay. I'll pass the witness.
Draw your attention back to exhibit number 42. And 1-39-1,
Sorry, can you hear what?
1-39-1 regarding the use of tape digital recorders. The subsection A, the second paragraph, the second sentence, at any time the primary and secondary officer should become separated, it will be the responsibility of the secondary officer to record all their contact and/or actions during that incident. I believe you testified earlier that you had been separated from Officer Roush when he was in his unit,
Yes.
and was your audio and video recording when he was separated from you?
I don't recall if it was activated, but at that time, I was separated, yes, but I wasn't having any contact, and there was no actions during that point.
Officer Roush was in his unit when you had to take Adrian Martel to the ground and cuff him, correct? Or to restrain him.
Sorry, one more time.
I'll withdraw the objection.
I'll rephrase the question, because I understand that there's an issue regarding the cuffing. When Officer Roush was in his unit, you and the cadet and the suspect were alone, correct?
Yes.
And was your audio and video recorded during that time?
No.
And during the time that the Officer Roush was separated from you, you had to detain Adrian, is that correct?
Yes.
And according to your SOP, that should have been recorded, correct? You had contact with Adrian at that one time, correct?
Yes.
You were a witness to the search and the seizure of Adrian Martel, correct?
To the pat down?
Correct. And you saw when Officer Roush seized the marijuana from...
No, I did not.
You didn't see that?
No.
You were there though when he was pat down?
Yes.
And you were a witness to when Mr. Martel was arrested, correct?
Yes.
So would you agree that you were a witness to this event?
To some of the events, yes.
Okay. And I'm not sure what was the final disposition of the case against Mr. Martel, but had it gone to trial, you could have been called as a witness, correct?
Correct.
Now, you indicated that your use of force was reasonable in the manner in which you detained Adrian Martel, correct?
Yes.
Now, if we were to believe the story of the cadet where you had punched Adrian twice in the head and twice in the ribs, would that be reasonable use of force?
No.
Okay, and if that did occur, then you would have notified your supervisor of that type of force being used?
Yes.
Okay, but that didn't occur in this case, correct?
No, it did not.
Okay. And going back to number 35, states, or the next, NM 35, it's labeled. Oops, that's not the right one. It's 34. Number 3, it says case number UOF-2014-00055882-A. Can you tell us about that incident?
I have no idea. I couldn't tell you.
You weren't involved in that incident? To your recollection?
I don't know what that incident is.
Please take a look at number 33, if you will. So, case tracking system. Do you have any idea what that's referencing? Do you recall missing a court date or getting disciplined for missing a court date?
Yes.
Okay, so could that case tracking system indicate that incident that I just referred to?
To missing court?
You don't know.
Oh,
Oh, it's
okay.
down below, I see. So you don't know what the first one is, case tracking system, IA, or CPC complaint?
I don't recall what that one's for now.
And the next one, use of force, do you know what that's referring to?
Exhibit 53, I believe.
I know with the CPC complaint is that one. I know what that one is.
Okay, that was the one where you were disciplined for not using your recorder previously, correct?
Yes.
And then the next one is use of force. This memorandum is dated August 21st, 2014, so it occurred, this memo came before the incident which we're referring to. So do you know what this use of force is indicating here?
No.
Okay. Had you ever been disciplined or had it ever been brought to your attention that use of force, that you've been questioned about your use of force in the past? No?
No.
Okay. The next one says tort claim. Do you have any idea what that's referring to?
I have no clue whatsoever.
Okay, the next one's civil lawsuit. You know what that's referring to?
No.
You haven't been a party to a civil lawsuit in your
No.
law enforcement career?
No.
Firearms discharge?
I've never discharged my firearm.
Okay. And then preventable accident, I believe you were referring to that earlier.
I know what that is, yes.
Okay. I don't have any more questions.
One quick follow-up on that point only. Exhibit, New Mexico Exhibit 33. If you know, is this memorandum saying that you have one claim in each of these categories against you within 1 year? Or is it saying that these are the categories the department looks at when there are 5 or more hits with any of these categories? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay, that's all I have.
I have a few questions. Do you have anything else, Mr. Granada? I have a few questions. In regards to Exhibit 33, if you go to the last paragraph, second to last paragraph, per section 3-49-6A of Administrative Orders Manual, the division head will ensure that a face-to-face meeting...
I'm sorry, just sit down just a little bit.
Sure. The division head will ensure that a face-to-face meeting is conducted with the employee to discuss any concerns and return the findings to you. Mr. Greer,
Yes.
was there ever a face-to-face meeting with a supervisor conducted with you regarding this memorandum?
I don't recall this memorandum, no. I know with the preventable accidents in the court, there was a face-to-face, but as far as this actual sheet of paper, I don't recall it.
Okay, so you had 2 face-to-face regarding those incidents, but there was none in addition to that?
Not that I can recall.
Then I'm a little confused about the event when you went back to the motel to determine if there was video footage. What I'm not clear about is, at the time you went back to the motel, were you or were you not on administrative leave?
I was not on administrative.
At what point after the visit to the motel were you placed on administrative leave?
If I can go into detail.
Certainly.
Okay, so that morning we were called in by Commander Wisma and Lieutenant Swanson to the Southeast Substation. Approximate ballpark time would be 9 o'clock a.m. We got called in. That's when we were told to upload all of our videos, anything like that. We were given a case or a CAD number, can't remember if it was both or one or the other, to actually tag in for this alleged, or for a possible use of force and misconduct. And then after that 9 o'clock meeting with them, they said, okay, we just wanted to bring this to your attention. If you are able to get anything that can clear you guys' names, that would be gratefully helpful for us, so that we can clear this and it'll be done, be squashed. So once we did that 9 o'clock meeting, myself and Officer Rosh left, I don't know where he went. I went to the motel at that point. I was still police officer capacity, I guess, if you will. I was not on duty, no, but I was in plain clothes. Went to the motel, asked to see the video. There was nothing that could clear my name as of that point. And then I proceeded to go home. And later that afternoon, I want to say approximately maybe 3 p.m. or somewhere in that approximate area, we were called back in by Lieutenant Swanson, and we needed to have all of our gear taken with us to the Southeast Substation because we were going to be put on IA. And then at that point, we still weren't on administrative leave yet. We went, turned in all of our stuff, we parked our cars, took our firearms and our shotguns and loaded them into Lieutenant Swanson's SUV. He drove us down to the Internal Affairs unit, which is downtown. We turned in all of our gear, met with Sergeant, I believe it was Tony Cimbala, I believe that's his first name. And then that's when he told us, pending this investigation, that we were being put on administrative.
I think that's all I have. Mr. Granada, Mr. Diamano, do you need to address anything I just raised?
Not.
All right.
No, thank you.
Okay. I imagine you'll be staying, so.
All right, good.
Let me see if my next witness is here.
You got 4 of them out there. 2 state, 2 local. It's just a category.
Yeah, it'll be different.
Thank you.
See, that's suspended.
Don't multitask.
Well, no. Down that is. And it is, so. Did you notice that? Right next to me, Daddy.
His like retention card and stuff? I don't think there's a retention card in there, it's just the, no, yeah, this is just the case itself.
Risk of all this, because that's kind of important.
It's probably just a use of force. What that looks like, it's just a use of force document, that he was involved in whatever they came out, they documented it. It might just be the use of force report itself, is what it could be. Like, it wouldn't necessarily have been an IA case. It would have been, okay.
Could it happen that he never knew about that? Well, I'll turn it.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, let's go over it. Sorry.
That's your first name, please,
Anthony,
and your middle initial,
C.
and your last name, please.
Simbala.
Can you spell it?
Yes, S-I-M-B-A-L-L-A.
Will you raise your right hand, please? You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Thank you.
Mr. Zambala, with whom are you employed?
The Albuquerque Police Department.
And what is your, well, let me back up a little bit. On March 20th, 2015, were you employed with the APD?
I was.
And what kind of position are you in?
I'm the Sergeant of the Internal Affairs Unit.
And what are your duties as Sergeant of the Internal Affairs Unit?
Is to investigate any alleged misconduct or internal complaints that may be coming from supervisors or other employees within the department.
And you had the same job back on the incident date of March 20th, 2015?
I did.
Okay, and how did you become involved with this case?
I was notified by an acting lieutenant, Michael Madrano, who was a sergeant also in the unit, was just upgraded at the time, because we didn't have a lieutenant, that a cadet that was in the police academy had gone through his chain of command, notified him of something that he believed was misconduct or inappropriate when he was on a ride-along, and that because of the allegations, they were going to assign the case to Internal Affairs, and I got assigned it.
Okay, and how long have you held this position in Internal Affairs?
I believe in May or the end of April will be 2 years of this year, so probably April of 2014, May of 2014 is when I got in there.
And how many years' experience do you have in law enforcement?
And 19.
Okay, and what were some of your other duties prior to this job assignment?
I started out as a police service aide, and then went through the academy, did field service time, then worked in an undercover capacity in Vice for about 3.5 years. Came back out to the field where I was a training officer, then went back undercover into the gang unit, did that for about 4.5 years, then went to the intelligence unit for 6 months or so. Then I got promoted to sergeant in January of 2014, and I went to the field for a little bit as a sergeant, and then went into internal affairs in April and May of 2014, and been there since.
And so how did you begin your investigation in this matter?
Based on the complainant being Cadet Henry at the time, Officer Henry now, I did an interview with him, and that's where I started out with. My first thing was an interview with him.
Okay. And what did you learn from Cadet Henry during your interview?
Are you asking about the totality of the interview, or just the basic specifics on it?
I guess, what did you learn were the allegations brought forward by the cadet?
At the time, he said that he was on a ride-along. He had gone to several calls where he was riding with Officer Roush, and his partner was Officer Greer. So during the times that they had taken their calls, they had taken several calls, one involving a down and out or a homeless individual, where he said Officer Greer wrenched on his arm to get him to stand up and sent him on his way after he made him do what he called was an airplane test. He said there was another call where an individual walked by and said hello to Officer Roush and then told Cadet Henry to be careful because of Officer Greer, because he quoted him by saying he's a dick. And then they took the third call, which was the major call, is how it was described by Cadet Henry, of another down and out subject where they had contact with this individual who appeared to be drunk or on narcotics. And as the guy appeared to stare at Officer Greer, the way it was explained, Officer Greer proceeded to get upset, push the guy to the ground, and punch him in the head several times in the ribs.
And did you make an audio recording of your interview with the cadet?
I did, both times.
Okay, and you interviewed him twice, you indicated?
I did.
During your interviews of the cadet, did you find him to be truthful?
I did.
And is that based upon your experience as a law enforcement officer, interviewing witnesses in the past?
I did. Yes.
What else did you do in conducting your investigation? With whom else did you speak?
I interviewed Cadet Henry twice. I interviewed Officer Manarino and Officer Richter, who were the academy instructors that Officer Henry went to. I believe he went to Officer Manarino right off the bat, and Officer Manarino wanted a witness that's why he brought in Officer Richter during that time. I was notified also that he told, at the time, Cadet Joshua Trujillo about the incident. I interviewed him. I interviewed Officer Greer. I interviewed Officer Roush. I interviewed Mr. Wu, who actually was the manager or owner of the Best Choice Inn. And from the initial start of this, the state police officers that had come in, I had actually given them what we had initially, minus the compelled statements I had got off the bat because of the allegations of the criminal content.
And let's see. Tell me about your interview with.
Can I actually go back and talk on that?
Sure.
If I could refer to my part here, my investigation, I believe those were the people that I interviewed. I also interviewed Commander Mike Wisnett, or John Wisnett, Lieutenant Mike Swanson, and then there was MDC personnel, the Metropolitan Detention Center medical staff employee that I also had a phone conversation with. And then I also reviewed all the PEL video from both officers, the PTC video, the Prisoner Transport Center video of this individual, all messages that came through via KDT messages between the two officers, the CAD printout, which was the call for service, the history for Officer Greer and Officer Roush during this time, the evidence.com log reports, which is what we use to tag our evidence cameras, police reports involved in this incident. I looked into our evidence through the Albuquerque Police Department for tracking of evidence. And then I also referred to the New Mexico State Police investigation and listened to the radio transmissions that took place during the time of these incidents.
And you drafted a report.
I did.
Regarding your investigation.
Yes.
And you had some ultimate recommendations.
No, I didn't make any recommendations in this.
What were your ultimate, I guess, conclusions then?
My conclusions were just to put together the facts of what was stated from every officer, everybody I interviewed, and put that together. The recommendations came from a commander, Dodi Camacho, and then, I'd have to refer here, but it went up the chain of command from Commander Camacho to Major Tim Gonerman, then to the Chief of Police, Chief Eden.
And did you interview the Adrian Martel?
No, I did not.
And why did you not interview him?
Based on the interview that the state police had, I adopted that interview that they had off of them.
Okay.
Believe I had enough from that, and figured for the totality of the administrative stuff needed to be addressed through the officers themselves.
Okay. I want to ask you about Commander Wisenot. Why did you interview that commander?
After my first interview with Officer Greer, he made a statement at the very end saying that he went to the Best Choice Inn to review video. And because that interview went kind of long, I believe it was close to 2 hours, I didn't snap on what he had said. And when I went back and reviewed this stuff, it triggered something asking why would this individual have gone up to the Best Choice Inn to go review these videos at the time. And through my interview at the time, I thought he didn't know what he was actually being interviewed on. So what I did is I interviewed his lieutenant and his commander first and found out if they actually told Officer Greer and Officer Roush what incident they were being looked at, or if it was a total, just a general, like, hey, we need you to upload everything and just be done with it. When I did that, they both had said that they had talked to them and said, we believe we told Officer Greer and Roush this incident regarding an individual at this hotel. So that in turn provided me to go do a second interview with Officer Greer based on that, and I also forgot to ask about some evidence that was found in his trunk. But the video, it prompted me to do a second interview because to see why he went up and did it, and he was able to clarify, saying that he was notified by his lieutenant and his commander that they told him about the incident, and I just wanted to verify through them that one wasn't lying or anything else, to see if they actually said that to Officer Greer, which it appeared they did, because at that point he wasn't on administrative leave. It was more of an inquiry saying, hey, go get your cameras uploaded because an allegation is coming through. And then later, I think it was that day, based on the interviews I did and stuff, led to the putting on administrative leave so the investigation could go formally through administrative process and then to the criminal process and back to us.
Okay. So in reference to the incident of arresting Adrian Marthel, is it your understanding that Officer Greer should have written a supplemental report on that incident?
Yes, based on what was said to me after my interviews and through the course of that, I believe something like that, something should have been documented based on his interview with him, what he said had happened. He should have documented his involvement in that situation.
And due to the fact that he visited the motel to review that evidence, should that have generated a second supplemental report?
Not necessarily. If his intentions were what Officer Greer said he was doing, going up there to look to see if there was anything to help his cause, he was off duty. He knew about the incident because the commander lieutenant told him that. He was going up there to check. My personal feeling on that was that I believe he was a little bit worried about it. That's why he went up there to go check and to see on it. He said that he didn't use his position of authority to view these videos. I went up, and when I talked and interviewed that individual, Mr. Wu, who he said he had contacted, that individual was very assertive in saying, who are you with, can I see your credentials and stuff. As where Officer Greer said he didn't do any of that. He said he walked up there, which leads me in turn to maybe believe that because Officer Greer worked that beat and worked that area and had been in there, he may have known the guy and just gone with the flow of it, or not. There was a little bit of a language barrier dealing with Mr. Wu. He speaks, I don't know if it's Vietnamese, Korean, something of that. So it's kind of hard, but at least the talking to him and explaining of what happened, and when I talked to him, he was very particular on asking who I was and finding out who I was before he answered any questions in that.
I understand. Did you have an opportunity to review that video footage from the motel?
I did.
And was there anything on it?
Nothing significant that could determine one way or another that anything happened other than you see the officers there, you see Officer Roush get out of the car and go to the area like they said happened, and then they walk the individual back to the cars.
Okay. And you also interviewed Cadet Joshua Trujillo?
I did.
And what was the point of that interview?
Because Officer Henry, or Cadet Henry at the time, had confided and said that he told Officer Trujillo about the situation. I wanted to see if it was consistent with what Officer Mandarino, Officer Richter, and Officer Henry's statements were. If Officer Trujillo would state the same thing, or if there was some maybe embellishment or changing in the story or something else that maybe either might have been forgotten that needed to be addressed or talked about.
Was Mr. Henry's statements consistent?
Yes, from what Cadet Trujillo stated, matched up with everything everybody else had said at that, up to that point, the only time I talked to him.
Okay, and is that the case with Mandarino as well?
Yes, him and Officer Richter both.
And the statements that he made to the state police as well, are those statements consistent?
Yes, but from their report, what I read, it sounded like the same thing that I got.
Okay, and you interviewed Mr. Wu, you talked about that just briefly. Did you discuss with Mr. Wu whether or not Adrian Marthel had been criminally trespassed from that location?
You might have referred to, yeah, just a second here. I don't remember if I did discuss that part. From what I have documented, and you know, there might be a little bit more on the digital copy of the interview. My specific goal with there was to talk about, does he remember an officer coming up, looking for the video? I showed him a picture of Officer Greer, said, do you recognize this individual? He immediately recognized him as an officer. He said that he told Officer Greer that there wasn't good quality of the video, but he let him look at it. And then he says he also remembers state police coming up to do it. So I don't remember exactly what you asked, but I don't think I asked that question of what you asked. I mainly stuck to the surveillance video.
And you also interviewed Officer Jerry Roush.
I did.
And can you tell us the substance of that interview?
Officer Roush went through the same process. He said how he got assigned Cadet Henry as a ride-along, how he was supposed to actually have somebody else, and then another officer wanted to ride along, so he switched. He said when Cadet Henry rode with him, they started taking calls. Officer Greer and Officer Roush appear to be partners. He said that they are partners. They take a lot of calls together. He talked specifically about the Fair and Square incident, which was a call of an individual there that had some mental problems that Officer Greer wasn't logged on but showed up on that call. He talked about another call. There's a down and out in the 200 block of Virginia, one that Officer Henry described as doing the airplane test, and Officer Greer wrenching on this guy's arm to get him to stand up, and then calling for rescue and canceling it. And then he talks about this specific incident. The incident with Adrian Marthel, he says he remembers going to the call, getting dispatched as a priority one, leaving from the Walmart down on San Mateo and Central. He says when he arrives up there, he sees the individual match the description up on the second floor. He talks about how he stopped the individual, detained him, did a pat-down search on it, got his information, brought him downstairs, had him sit on the curb with Officer Greer and the cadet as he went to go obtain, or to run his information to do NCIC checks, warrants, to make sure he wasn't lying about his name. He gets to his car, he pulls it up close by. He says, as he's in there running, he looks up, he sees Officer Greer, sort of in what he calls as a struggle with him. He says he runs up to assist him, gets the guy into cuffs, and says that there was no problems with the situation at all.
Did Officer Roush indicate what that struggle looked like?
No. When I asked about it, he was very vague on what he remembers seeing in that. And the thing that was interesting with his interviews and stuff, he was very detailed on a lot of the night of that incident, except for the incidents that had gotten brought up. And when it was a lot of, I don't remember, I don't know. And so that specific incident there, he had details with some of the involvement, but then some of it not. And so when I asked about, did you see what happened? Were there any punches or anything like that? He says, I didn't see anything because I just saw them sort of go to the ground, so I ran out to go assist.
Through your investigation, does the lack of knowledge or the lack of ability to remember certain events of that evening correspond to when the video wasn't recording?
Yes.
For both officers?
Yes.
Okay. And so, did you have an opportunity to review the audio and video that was made that evening?
By the officers?
Yes.
Yes.
And what did you learn by looking at that audio and video?
I have to review notes specifically, but from what I remember is I believe Officer Greer had a 14-second buffer of no audio. And the way these cameras are programmed is when they're on, they're running consistently, and it's going through a 30-second buffer of, it records 30 seconds, and then as the next second comes up, it just overlaps each other. As soon as you hit record, that 30 seconds gets to memory on that. And then at that time you start to record, becomes audio portion of it. With Officer Greer's, I believe there was like 14 seconds of non-audio, which indicates the way that the camera works is that it either got powered on, it waited, and then he waited a few seconds, hit his button to record it, and it only got the 30 seconds, so it wasn't running in an on continuous continuous loop as it was, or maybe it got unplugged from his battery pack, and he had to plug it back in, let it reset itself, and then when he hit record it was after it booted itself up. If it was on and running consistency, there would have been a 30-second buffer, and based on his statement and the cameras being looked at, it appeared everything was working correctly, so there shouldn't have been a mechanical error on it.
When did the audio and video start recording during the incident?
When they were, Mr. Marthel had already been handcuffed, was standing at the back of the vehicle, and it looks like it starts when they're like unlocking the car to put him in there and doing maybe a secondary search on him or a search incident to an arrest, to get him in the car and they're getting his property and putting it on the trunk.
So the initial contact wasn't recorded?
No, there was nothing recorded other than after he had been placed into handcuffs and was standing at the back of the car for Officer Greer's video. Officer Roush is the same, that's when it starts, but he's got a little bit more. He recorded, I believe, the transport from the hotel down to the prisoner transport center, and he also records contact of an employee at the counter after Mr. Marthel's been arrested. He walks up and asks him a question. I don't remember exactly what it was, if he knew this guy or if he was staying or something to that effect. And so there's 3 separate little videos that are very small in time frame.
So for those 3 separate videos, does that indicate that it was 3 separate times that the recorder was turned off and on to
Yes.
record? It wasn't one continuous recorder?
Correct.
And you also interviewed Donna Richter,
Yes, sir.
and what was that interview regarding?
It was just regarding to when Cadet Henry made the allegation of this misconduct to Officer Manarino. I believe he stated it to both of them. Officer Manarino wanted to witness. When he started talking about it, he stopped and brought her in, and I just wanted to see if her consistency was the same as she remembered, as what Officer Manarino remembered, what Officer Henry told her, and what Cadet Trujillo also remembers being told.
So was the story consistent?
It was.
Through her testimony or her interview? You also contacted the MDC medical staff?
Yes, an individual that was identified, I think her name was Kaki, or is like Kaaki, so.
And what was the point of that contact?
Based on the allegation that Cadet Henry stated, and I think I'll quote, that Officer Greer hit the individual with all that he could muster, and the guy hitting his head on the pavement and it bouncing off the pavement. I wanted to see if there was any kind of consistency, since rescue wasn't called, with that statement and marks and, you know, maybe some swelling, some road rash, anything of that sort. I called, asked to see if she could pull the medical file when he was seen, because having experience with the medical staff up at MDC, they are very, I don't know what the right word I'm trying to use is, they don't allow anybody to be accepted up there if there's any complaints, especially of head trauma, or if there's any kind of physical damage that one may have based on a fight or something like that, and they hadn't been seen or checked out, then make us go to the hospital to get them cleared before coming in. I called to ask to see if anything was said, like if Marthel had said, you know, he had a headache, he had swelling, they noticed, you know, any of that stuff. None of that stuff was noticed on there. I did notice on the booking photo it looked like a red mark on the forehead, and I asked about that abrasion, and she said that she went and looked at some old pictures, which looked like it could be either a birthmark or something consistent, because they said it looked like it was in older photos of what she had told me.
I'm sorry, repeat the last part.
She said that the mark that's on his booking photo from that night looked consistent with previous bookings.
Okay.
With that, he didn't make any any other statements, I think, to her, except for maybe she said that he had previously been in a fight. If you give me just a second here, I can tell you exactly what. She said when she pulled up his information, she asked him if he'd been seen with a doctor within the past, or he had seen a doctor within the past 6 months for a rib injury. She also made the statement that it appeared he was wasted on vodka, wasted being a slang term for being intoxicated. I asked about the redness on his forehead, like I said. She said there's nothing documented in the file, and after looking at older booking photos, she thought it could have been a scar based on the way it appeared on the older one. But she had no other documentation of him being injured at the time of being brought in.
So Mr. Martell didn't complain of any injuries?
No, nothing to her, she said, or nothing to the staff. I don't think she was the one who actually intook him. I believe state police actually talked to those individuals that were the ones who did the intake on him, but she pulled up what that individual had documented that night, and it didn't show anything like that.
What's your understanding of when officers need to use their tape and digital recorders?
The way our standard operating procedures define it is if you're going to have contact with an individual, it needs to be recorded. If you're a secondary individual or secondary officer on a call and you get separated, then you should turn on your recorder to have that stuff recorded. There are specific incidents that really direct having a recording of it. If you think you're going to be involved in a complaint, domestic violence, those situations. But in there it says it wants the recordings to be recorded when there's a contact or within the individual.
And as part of your investigation, you looked at the CAD reports for both officers?
I did.
And in particular for Officer Greer, do you recall about how many times he was called out?
I believe that night he had maybe 8 calls for service that were logged through the CAD system, but admitted to being on 2 other calls Officer Roush was on that he didn't actually log on. And then the third was implied, because Henry said he was on this call, Officer Roush said that he was there, but Officer Greer said he didn't remember being on that call. So there's possibly another 3 that he was on that he didn't log that night.
Through your investigation, how many of those calls did Officer Greer make a video or audio recording of?
I believe out of that night there was 2 that he had. One at the very beginning of the shift when he went to an accident that Officer Roush was taking, and he showed up and turned it on for a minimal amount of time. I don't know if it was like maybe a minute or 2. And then for the incident at the Best Choice Inn with Mr. Martell, he had it on, I want to say it was like a minute 45 or something like that at the very end of it.
When you interviewed Officer Roush, did he tell you whether or not he arrested Adrian?
He did arrest him at one point, yes.
Okay, and did he put the cuffs on Adrian?
I believe he said he did, yeah.
Okay. When an individual is arrested, are officers required to read the Miranda rights prior to being cuffed?
No, not necessarily. It doesn't read the Miranda rights if they're going to ask questions about the crime being committed. If they decide not to question the individual, they don't have to read the rights.
And in your training and experience, though, when is a pat down allowed?
A pat down is supposed to be for weapons for an officer safety type situation. In this situation, based on the knowledge that they had, and I mean, if we're going off in this situation, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
With this, having an individual that wasn't wanted on this property, and when they say showing up, appearing to be intoxicated, not sort of listening to commands right off the bat, I believe a pat down for weapons is acceptable at that time. As we're going through with the search or anything else, I think there needs to be some more reasonable suspicion, probable cause, that stuff being established to where it was. My concern was when Officer Roush said that he began to pat this guy down, and narcotics on him for what was a weapon search, I sort of questioned that on the way that was.
Okay. And in terms of collecting evidence, what are officers required to do in terms of the SOP for collecting evidence, video and audio in particular?
Video and audio, because of the field officers having what we call as our taser camera that's attached to the neck or shoulder lapels, they're supposed to be uploaded, and you have to go to, it's two-pronged. You have to go into what they call as a sync program. It's an app for this evidence.com, and you upload it. And when you upload it, you attach whether this was a misdemeanor crime, felony crime, is it going to be deleted in 120 days? Is this a restricted type retainment thing that we want to keep for a long time based on the seriousness of the crime? And then you also either assign a case number to it, and you download it that way. Once that's done and those things are accomplished, it gets uploaded from sync into evidence.com, and then you're supposed to go into the APD evidence app or website of what we call as QTEL. You get in there, you create another document showing that this case number has now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 videos, however many you would have on that, showing that. So then if it ever has to become for discovery or evidence of the case, they can go and know that there's a video regarding this incident tagged into evidence.
Now, did Officer Greer collect evidence pursuant to this SOP correctly?
As a totality of it, he didn't record the beginning part, so I'd say no, that's not correct. Did he have evidence on it? Yes, he did.
Okay, and did he upload it properly?
It was uploaded, but it wasn't uploaded properly.
And how, can you explain that, please?
I'd have to go back and double check on that, but I believe he didn't put a case number with this incident,
Okay.
and he didn't put what we call as a category on it. And the category is misdemeanor felony, 120-day deletion, retain this. There's like 5 or 6 categories that go with it. And then you're supposed to put the case number with it if you're going to retain that, unless, like if we have it, as an example, if I do a traffic stop and it just ends up being a citation, I'll upload my video and I'll put the category of 120-day deletion. After that, it disappears. But if there's a case that has evidence being attached to it, you're part of it, you should attach a case number to it, upload it, and tag it into that evidence so it can be reviewed and used for prosecution and or discovery.
And the fact that evidence would be uploaded and properly tagged, would that also indicate that there should be a supplemental, kind of explain?
There should be. There are certain occasions where an officer can cover this in, like, cover another officer in his report by saying, you know, Officer Greer was with me on this as an example. I had no involvement, but had his recordings. That too was uploaded into evidence and tagged. There could be situations like that, but based on the situation of this situation, Officer Greer stating that he actually had to put hands on Mr. Marthel of not letting him get up and stand, and what he had said with that, and then him also conducting what was half of a pat down. The way it was explained is Officer Roush took one side of Mr. Marthel, Officer Greer took another side. With that happening and then finding narcotics and him being trespassing, in this situation, it probably should have been uploaded, tagged, and maybe a supplemental written on this one.
So I'm sure through your investigation, you discovered that the story from the cadet and the story from Mr. Greer are vastly different regarding what happened to Mr. Martel.
Correct.
And regarding the story that Officer Greer has told, can you tell us a little bit about what he told you?
And are we talking about just strictly with Mr. Marthel?
In terms of once Mr. Martel was sat down on the curb, the interaction between Officer Greer and Mr. Martel.
Officer Greer stated that he had sat Mr. Marthel down on the on maybe like a parking structure, concrete barrier that prevents you from going a little bit further, and sat him down there and had this individual face, I believe it was west, which is facing a building. Officer Greer said that he was sort of out of it. He appeared that he was probably intoxicated and was sitting there. At one point, he ends up looking up at the cadet and starts staring at him. Cadet Henry states that Officer Greer addresses it immediately and tells Mr. Marthel to stop looking at him, to look at the fucking ground, something to that effect. Officer Greer says he never cussed during that time, he just told Mr. Marthel to look at the ground. This was said a couple times. He said based on the way it was set up, the configuration is Mr. Marthel sitting there, directly in front of him was the cadet, and to his left was where Officer Greer was standing, to keep what we call as an L formation for tactic reasons. He says at one point, Mr. Marthel puts his hands down on the concrete barrier as if he was going to stand up. Officer Greer says he immediately approached the individual to not allow him to do that, grabbed his left hand with his left wrist, basically C-clamped it to hold it in position, and when he grabbed a hold of him, Mr. Marthel just basically gave up, just rolled over on his side as where Officer Greer gave him instructions, like don't do it, or hey, or something to that effect, where Marthel complied with it. He says Mr. Marthel rolled over on his side. He said he rolled him over to get him on his stomach, which was a prone position, and grabbed his left arm, which he still had control of, to put it behind his back. Officer Greer said Officer Roush had come to assist at that point, pulled the right arm, which was compliant, put it behind his back. He believes Officer Roush handcuffed the individual based on the color of cuffs that was on the individual. He believes Officer Roush is the one who put him on there. He said at that point he was able to stand him back up, and there was complete compliance on Mr. Marthel's part.
And based on the story that was told to you by Mr. Greer, do you believe that he used force?
Objection, notice. I mean, there's no findings except for fact-finding. His personal belief as to truth or falsity is beyond the scope of this witness. It's for this hearing officer to decide.
Sustain, restate your question, Mr. Bruno.
Based on the story of Mr. Greer, that he had to grab hold of Mr. Martel's wrist, does that indicate use of force?
That alone, no. It's not, the way it's defined now, under new guidelines and new rules that we have, yes. At the time it was, that necessarily, if it happened directly how he said it did, complete compliance and just him rolling over on his side, that would not designate it as a use of force.
Okay. And what about the story that was told by Cadet Henry with the strikes to the head and the strikes to the ribs?
If that happened, yes, that would definitely be considered a use of force and wouldn't need to be documented. The supervisor would need to come out and...
Someone would need to come out.
A supervisor, I'm sorry. And our process of photographing and taking last point of contact pictures and everything else, that would have come into play.
When you reviewed any of the video evidence of this incident, could you notice any injuries to Mr. Martel?
Yeah, I believe the only thing I saw that raised any kind of question in this was maybe the prisoner transport video, where it showed maybe a little bit of redness on one of the sides of his face, and I don't even remember which side it was. But again, it's not great video. It's the angles that it was at. Yeah, I couldn't make a conclusive statement whether or not there was anything there or not on that.
Were there any photographs taken of his rib section?
That night, no.
Did you interview any other officer or any other witnesses in this case?
I believe the only people, as I stated, let's see here from before, was that were interviewed were Cadet Henry, Cadet Trujillo, Officer Richter, Officer Manarino, Lieutenant Swanson, Commander Wismet, Officer Greer, Officer Roush, and the female from the Metropolitan Detention Center medical staff.
And so, what did you include in your report? Did you include violations that were noted?
They're what we call issues of concern,
Okay.
which are either special orders or standard operating procedures that have been documented. So there were a list of those that were included as that needed to be answered upon based on the allegations that have been brought forth.
So what were the issues of concern that you noted?
There's quite a few of them. Let's see here. I mean, this is, let me see here. This many pages is how it is because there's a lot of writing, because what we do is we said, did he follow special order of this? And then we write what the whole special order was, or did he follow this SOP section which states this, and we write that paragraph that dictates it. I can give you a general sort of rundown of the 18, or if you want me to read verbatim, word for word of all these.
Not verbatim, just a general rundown would be sufficient.
I gave, there was a special order that talked about categorizing videos that are uploaded into syncandEvidence.com. That was one issue of concern. Another one was that he uses digital recorder to document the incident. Another one was, did he write a report on all instances that involve felonies, misdemeanors, petty misdemeanor? Was he in compliance with the law and rules and regulations?
Let me interrupt you for just 1 second. I know that you're looking at your report. Can you take a look at what's been marked as NM39 and see if that's the same document that you're looking at?
Yes, this is what it is. If it ends with number, I think 18, yes.
Okay. So if you can just continue with the...
Counsel, if you look at Exhibit 17, that may be more helpful. Compare that with 17.
So if you can just continue.
Okay. One that was included in here is being indicted or formally charged with criminal charges. Another one should not commit any acts or omit any acts which constitute a violation of any rules, regulations, or directives. A conduct unbecoming could bring the department in disrepute. The truthful question, the answer all questions truthfully. And then in the use of force, once control of the subject is gained, there's no longer an objectively reasonable threat.
There's no longer what?
An objectively reasonable threat. Strikes, blows, or other tools is considered excessive. Another one was when practical officers must not engage in unreasonable actions or tactics that precipitate the use of force as a result of this. Next one was officers continually assess the effectiveness of their actions and consider the desired outcome of the level. When a confrontation escalates suddenly, an officer may use any means necessary to defend himself, or as long as it is reasonable. It goes into empty-hand technique. What that is close quarter strike, grab, takedown, or proper arrest techniques. And then there's a second one that's post-deployment considerations, which they check this individual for injuries and get him the required medical attention if there was any. And then there's another reporting requirement where it says officers will notify supervisors as soon as practical when use of force.
Practical what?
When a use of force is incident occurs. And then the report of non-deadly use of force incidents. And then one of the other ones was a stop and frisk, the Terry stop in this situation. And the last one was evidence, was it tagged properly, or once it's in custody of the officer, was it used through the Albuquerque Police Department's evidence tagging process.
Okay. I want to direct your attention to NM 17 just briefly.
Okay.
So what does that indicate?
This is what Commander Dodi Camacho wrote on her findings. And basically what she did is she took all the issues of concern, those 18 ones, looked at them and specifically, and then wrote what appears to be a paragraph or a sentence on a couple of them, saying that she either sustained the violation, not sustained, exonerated, unfounded, and went through it. So these are the 18 violations that were addressed as an issue of concern, and this was the findings of the first reviewing and commanding officer, being Commander Camacho, writing her facts on it, and then at the very end, I believe she wrote another paragraph as a conclusion type thing.
And after she makes her findings, where does this report go?
It goes up, because Officer Greer is in the field, it goes up to a major. We have deputy chiefs and majors. Field services is broken up between two majors. Officer Greer at the time works for Major Gonerman, so it goes from Commander Camacho, who was not his immediate commander, because I interviewed Commander Wisnett, did not think that we would want him to review it being fair and unbiased, we wanted it outside. Commander Camacho reviewed it, she sends it to the major, who's got no involvement in it, who then does another review and writes his recommendations or concurs with it, goes to the chief, same process, and then at that point it goes to a pre-disciplinary hearing where they make the recommendation. This situation, they made the recommendation of termination. Officer Greer was notified of that. He was set up with a pre-disciplinary hearing, which at that time he was set up with the chief of police to go and explain his side on basically a one-on-one type situation. And I don't know if he did or not, but that's the process of it. They have the right to do it or not. Once they do that, sometimes the chief will overturn findings, or sometimes he just concurs with what the original findings are and goes with them. It's up to him on that matter, but they have that. And once it comes down, it comes to the final disciplinary, final discipline, which ended up, I believe, in this case, termination.
I'll just ask you a couple of questions regarding, there was a search conducted on Officer Greer's unit, and there were some items found, and you brought him in for a second interview. Did any of those items have anything to do with the case for today?
No,
So that was something completely separate?
something completely separate. If you want some explanation on why and how that happened, I can give you that. If not, it has nothing to do with this.
No, I'll just let it go at this point in time. At this point, I'm going to pass the witness.
Sure, thank you. So, let's start with the most recent first. You spoke about a pre-disciplinary hearing where the chief can accept the recommendations of the commanders and deputy chiefs, or make his own determination, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And the date of Commander Camacho or Deputy Chief Camacho's was sometime in June?
When she reviewed it?
Yeah. Look at this.
Yeah, if you give me a second.
I don't know. June 19th, I have a signature of Exhibit 16. Let me show you this.
Okay, there's that, yeah.
That's chain of command recommendations.
Yeah, June 19th is when the day she signed that recommendation form as well,
Okay.
so.
And then we have Tim Garnerman, again, Commander,
Yes.
622, sorry, Deputy Chief, right?
He's a major,
Major,
yes.
62215. And then on June 24th, we have a Major Gonterman, I'm sorry.
A major what?
Major Gonterman, Gonterman, on June 24th.
That's the chief on the 24th, actually.
Actually, that's the Major.
No, because it's the chief and then the date, the major and the
Let me
date.
show you what, let me show your attention to Exhibit New Mexico 18. Can you identify that? Is that the pre-disciplinary hearing
Yes.
report we spoke of?
Yes,
All right, and we started out with what, 18, 19 SOP violations and special order violations?
yes, sir.
All right, this is over the chief's signature, dated July 2nd, 2015.
Okay.
All right. Could you review these and count the number of SOP violations that are included in this notice instrument?
Well, what I think you're referring to, because it only shows 10 SOP violations,
I'm going to follow up with, go ahead.
but on some of them, such as this second one here, where it says 252-6,
Right.
this is actually 2 of them there, because I believe,
So one SOP violation, different subsections, can be collapsed into one. When we looked at the totality, it looks at 18.
it could, but they also could be their own separate. Each one could be
That's
their own thing.
discretionary with the chief.
Yeah, with the chief, yes.
So the fact the number of SOP violations is not in itself telling if one reduces it to the SOP sections, correct?
Correct.
All right, so let's stick with these just for a second. And your findings contained in your report presuppose Henry's statement is true. Because if Henry's statement is not true, most, if not all, of these go away except for the report and the video.
Not necessarily, because if anybody comes in and makes an allegation,
Sure.
we get somebody off the street that just comes in and says, Officer A punched Officer B. We would have to look at the totality of that. So based on his statement, the allegations would still be there, just the findings may be different if it
Well,
was
that's-
completely falsified.
Yeah, that's my point. I mean, your findings that, based on your investigation, support these SOP violations, presuppose that Henry's telling the truth.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have to be
Because-
addressed, based on his allegations, they have to be addressed.
I understand that.
I didn't make any findings in this case, if that's what you're referring to. I make none at all, I go through is, I wrote down what everybody else said, I summarized that.
Why didn't you then make a finding that a city employee, albeit non-commissioned, non-certified, was untruthful? Henry?
Well, based on him filing the allegations of this, it implicated Officer Greer, Officer Roush, as being what we call as the subjects of these investigations.
But it's also common during a subject investigation, other subjects are targeted and issues of concern are referenced with them, correct?
They can be, yes.
And it's also true that cadets in the Albuquerque Police Department Academy are subject to these same SOPs.
Absolutely.
My question stands. Why didn't you raise an issue of concern as to truthfulness with Andrew Henry?
Based on my interviews with everybody,
Okay, let me stop you there. Based on your interviews, you concluded that Greer's lying. Henry's telling the truth. Who else did you witness that had personal knowledge as to what happened? Who saw what happened?
only those three.
No, there's two.
Well, yeah, Officer
Greer
Greer.
and Henry.
Yeah.
One said black, one said white. The issue of concern with truthfulness was only directed to Greer though, correct?
Yes, he was the subject of this investigation.
All right, so of the 9 calls that you showed on the CADs for the day in question, March 20th, how many of these calls was Greer a backup or an 82 officer?
I don't know.
So how many calls did a primary officer have the primary duty to lapel video the call?
The same amount as the other officer. I mean, it depends. If they're having interaction with the individual, they need to record it.
The 8 calls, if a primary is recording the call, the secondary doesn't have to record a call. The primary's responsibility, under the SOP that you cite, the primary officer has the responsibility of ensuring that the call is videotaped if you make civilian contact.
Unless they get separated.
How many times on the calls, 8 or 10, anywhere between 8 and 10, was Greer the primary officer?
Give me a second. Let me
Sure, take a look. And then while you're looking at that, if you can do 2 things at once, was he a primary officer on the,
Objection. It's 2 questions. Just one at a time.
I'll withdraw the question,
Sustained.
thanks, counsel.
At least 3 calls he was primary on that day.
Okay. So 3 of the 8 is primary, 5 you can't tell, 6 you can't tell?
Yeah, I mean, some say backup, some don't, some just.
How many say
that?
that? Okay.
So,
But
I mean.
you would
yes.
agree with me that if he's a backup officer, an 82 officer, assisting officer, his primary responsibility is not recording. Unless, of course, they're separate.
Correct, or if it's, falls into those categories of what needs to be recorded on.
This wasn't a domestic violence call.
No.
This was not, let me see, there's 5 categories, none of which really applied here, because if you listen to Greer, the last one was, did he have reason to believe that a complaint was going to be made?
Yeah, and that's an interpretation one.
I'm sorry, can you answer?
That's an interpretation one.
Okay, let me just go back and make sure we hit this right.
too. Are you looking for that specific
Yeah, the one
stuff?
standard
Yeah.
where there's 5 or 6 instances.
Yeah, here, resisting disorderly conduct, refusing to obey, start of a search warrant until it's concluded, contact where a person believes a complaint can result, domestic and domestic violence.
None of which occurred with the Martell matter, correct?
No.
You know, you indicated that Officer Greer should have done a supplement to Roush's report, correct?
After his interview and based on that, yes.
Well, we had to do reports on March 20th, completed within 24 hours unless the supervisor extends that, correct?
Correct.
All right, so then the charge is marijuana, unlawful possession of, misdemeanor, city code. Wasn't even a misdemeanor, right? It's a city code violation, 12-4-9. And then criminal trespass, also a misdemeanor. Now, there has been testimony, and I believe your investigation shows that Roush discovered the marijuana and was the prosecuting witness.
Correct.
And criminal trespass, Roush was the prosecuting witness for that case, with the chief witness being someone from Best Choice Inn. What other witnesses are needed to prosecute those 2 cases? Those 2 charges, I'm sorry.
I guess, no other.
No one
Yeah.
else, okay. However, if you disregard Greer's statement as untruthful, and by Andrew Henry's statement as truthful, then we need more witnesses on this report, and a supplement has to be done, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, you also had the privilege of getting the New Mexico State Police work product over review.
Correct.
Just so everybody's clear, criminal can go to internal affairs. Internal affairs can go to criminal, but for the interviewed statements of the suspect, in this case, Mr. Greer.
No, any compelled statements. I
Any
cannot
compelled
give,
statement?
any compelled statements, I
Thanks for
did
the
not. I can give them, I told them that there was video, because we knew there was lapel video and there was that. I told them that, here's a list of people that are involved. I didn't tell them anything, that's why, when I said earlier to explain the search warrant in the car, they had no idea what the totality of the stuff was, and I told them, so you're gonna have to figure that out on your own.
Okay.
So they went to their measures of what needed to be done on it, because I couldn't tell them anything that was said. I can say, here's reports, here's video, you go look at it, you go do your stuff, but I couldn't tell them what was being said. That was up to them to go conduct their interviews, and that's why they had to re-interview Matarino and Richter and Henry and everybody else.
So, you read the state police report and their interviews prior to conducting any interviews on your part?
No, I think I had conducted my interview with Cadet Henry, Officer Matarino, Officer Richter, and I believe the second interview with Cadet Henry and Cadet Trujillo before I decided, before it was turned over for the criminal investigation. So I got to review Mr. Marthel's statement. Officer Greer didn't give one. Officer Roush's statement, I think they talked to another witness that was there at the scene. So I got to review those prior to, but the other stuff I believe was done or conducted before it was turned over to them.
And after you completed the New Mexico State Police review of their work product, did you call anybody back in for interviews?
Of the people that I had already interviewed?
Yes, sir.
Oh, no, I don't believe so.
Okay. Did you not see any discrepancies or changes in stories from Henry's statement to the state police compared to his statement to you?
I didn't notice any when I reviewed it.
Did you see in his
I
statement?
didn't notice what I'm saying.
I didn't notice any when I reviewed it. Sorry.
Did you see Mr. Henry tell the state police officer that he may have hit his head on the concrete, he being Martell?
Yes. I remember being, I know I remember being told that, and I believe I remember reviewing it. Grant, this is
Sure, no, I
a while
understand.
ago.
And my questions are not to trip you up or trick you, I just want you to give me your best memory. that statement to the state police differed from the statement Henry gave you that his head bounced 2 times off the concrete. That's not a discrepancy.
He had
May have
said,
hit the head, bounced off the concrete twice.
I see what you're saying, but I interviewed him twice on this. I got his story on what it was, and that's why I went forth from there for them to explain their side of what they were being accused of.
All right, so, I mean, your testimony today, you reviewed state police interviews, their reports, your interviews with your witnesses, no inconsistencies. Did you interview, you did interview Richter, Don Richter, and let me just see this. On March 26th, there's a transcription
Yes,
of
that's.
that. That would
yes.
be Mexico 47. She told you that Henry told her, and I'm quoting, "I think I hurt my hand from punching this suspect that was on the ground." And then he said a few times throughout the shift, he would kind of shake his hand like that if it hurt. Remember her telling you that?
Yeah, yes.
Did you ask Officer Henry what happened after the Prisoner Transport Center? What other contact he had with Greer?
He didn't, he said. I believe I asked him that. He said that he didn't because the Officer Roush went down to book the individual. Officer Greer went out to, took other calls while he was gone. And then I think at the end they went back to go tag their stuff at the sub, and maybe he had like a contact there, but they didn't have any more call contact, if I recall correctly.
Do you find that illogical that throughout the shift, after the Martel call, Greer was telling Henry that his hand hurt him? After the Martel call.
I guess you confused me.
Okay.
Sorry.
Let me make sure I'm not taking it out of context. Here. Counsel, I'm looking at page 1, 2, these are 3, 6, page 9, bottom third, beginning with the officer.
What number is
Which
it?
exhibit?
I'm sorry, 47.
Sorry, I hear your first part. Page 9.
47, page 9, I think. First line on top says running the information. Here's his number. Oh, yeah, there you go. Do you have a second to read that?
I did have to say.
All right, do you understand my question now?
Just say it one more time, just to make sure,
Okay.
but yes.
So, this interview, Donna Richter apparently listened to Officer Henry tell her what happened in front of Joe Marino, or sometime at or near the Marino interview.
Correct.
Okay. You're interviewing her, and she's telling you that Andrew Henry told her that, quote, Greer says, "I think I hurt my hand from punching this suspect that was on the ground," right? And, this is Richter, and then he said, a few times throughout the shift, he would kind of shake his hand like that as if it was hurt, he being Greer. If Henry leaves at the end of this call and goes home by his own testimony at the conclusion of booking, how would he be in a position to hear Greer say throughout the rest of the shift, which ended at 11 o'clock, "My hand hurts"?
To answer this question, is one, this is Officer Richter's recollection of how she remembered it be coming through.
Do you think she made that up?
No, because Henry had stated in there at some point that Officer Greer had looked at Officer Roush and made the fist and rubbed it. Now, she might have the time frame off, but the content of what was said was consistent with what was said throughout the interviews.
You would agree with me that it's impossible, given Henry's representation to you, he went home at the close of this call and was in no position to hear Greer's statements for the rest of the shift. You would agree with that?
For after the fact, yes.
Okay.
But Henry, I believe in his statement said, while they were 34 after Martell was arrested, and they're sitting there and Roush is doing the paperwork, that Greer looked over him at one point and looked at Roush, made a fist or rubbed his hand, and that's what his statement was to me.
You had an opportunity to review the lapel camera of Roush while he was transporting to the Prisoner Transport Center, Martell, right?
Yes.
Was there any skips, blips, or beeps?
From that point, no, but from the time that he said that this happened.
No, listen to me.
Okay.
Don't anticipate.
Okay,
no,
yeah,
no.
I'm sorry.
All right. Was there any gap from the time he started his recording and transporting this prisoner to the time he got to Prisoner Transport Center? From the time he starts his lapel, he being Roush,
Yes.
he's got a prisoner in the back, he's got Henry to his right, passenger side,
Correct.
and he's going to the Prisoner Transport Center, right?
From when he decided to turn it on in the car.
Yeah.
To drive down there and stuff, no, I do not believe that there was a stoppage from there until he got down there.
Do you hear Martell say, "Hey man, if you let me go, I won't tell on you"?
There was some kind of conversation, but I don't recall if that was said or not, so I don't remember.
Henry told me that though, didn't he?
He did say that, yes.
As a matter of fact, again, going back to Officer Richter, sorry ma'am.
No?
During that period of time, in the transport period, Officer Roush asked Henry, quote, "Are you cool with this?" That wasn't on the tape, was it? On the lapel video?
I don't recall that being on that.
Okay. I mean, if it was on there, it'd be in your report, right?
Yes.
As a confirmatory fact. Henry tells me something, it was independently confirmed on video, which it was not in this case, right?
Correct.
Okay. And he goes on to say, this is everything he's been telling Richter. Meaning after they, this is Richter, meaning after this gentleman was beat up, they asked Cadet Henry, "Are you cool?" or something like that. I'm not that guy. That's not a lapel camera, right?
No.
Okay. Now, your questioning of the witnesses in this case was pretty expansive. I mean, you were focused on this incident because that's the complaint.
Yes.
But like you testified as the trunk, there was other areas that you looked at, right?
Yes.
Okay, it's a natural investigator's instinct. Did Henry ever tell you during his interview, first or second, or the criminal interviews with the state police, that Greer and Roush bragged to them about who they had beaten up?
I don't know if that, I don't think that was said in my...
That came from Richter. Because Henry tells Richter, quote, like we call it 34ing meeting, right? When you can talk, and it was always about beating people up and this type of thing. And I'm sure that other things Cadet Henry told me that I just can't recall. But you remember that. Henry never told you that, did he?
I'd have to go back and review. And granted, my summary of that is not the entire interview of everything, so it may be an oversight on my part, but...
No, I've known you too long, Tony, because had you been told that, Henry would have told you, you would have questioned Roush and Greer about that, right? Have you ever beaten anybody up and bragged
I
about
thought
it?
I did question him on that, so...
Go ahead, take him.
Yeah, give me just a second here.
And that was Greer's first or second, 52 and 53. You're questioning Trujillo, you're thinking of Trujillo?
No, I'm trying to find Greer's... first interview. I don't have it documented in here, so I may not have asked that question, or it may not have been told to me at that time.
All right. But you do remember, what was it,
Mr. Richter?
Richter telling you that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Now, while we were looking, I'm looking at Exhibit 49. Now Trujillo tells you that, question, line 63, do you remember during your times ever seeing anything that may have raised a red flag in your mind about Greer? You made the comment that Officer Greer was kind of sketchy. Oh, the outside of things. Can you elaborate that a little bit more? Cadet Trujillo, line 64. By that, I mean I never saw a direct violation or anything. Him hitting anyone for sure, nothing like that. Just his attitude. Did you ask him that question? Did he give you that answer?
He did, yes.
Okay. Did anyone that you've interviewed corroborate that Greer either bragged about, talked about, spoke of prior beatings? Anyone present on the scene when, yeah, I saw Greer punch somebody?
No.
Okay. And, all right. Take too much of this. Who handcuffed this suspect on the 20th of March? Was it Greer or Roush?
Officer Henry said that he thought it was Greer. Officer Greer stated, no, it was Roush.
What did you confirm?
The video had stainless steel silver handcuffs on the individual, which Officer Greer stated that that's what Officer Roush carried. He stated he carried black stainless steel handcuffs on him. So based on that, it appeared that Officer Roush had used his handcuffs based on Officer Greer's statement for that.
Consistently from day one until this morning, Henry says he saw Greer handcuff Martell. Okay. All right. So we get to, through Richter's testimony.
Still Richter.
Still on Richter, but did Officer Henry tell you on Monday morning he went to moot court with his cadet class, talked to Trujillo, and the following day he contacts Joe Manarino?
That's how I recall.
That's how you recall it, right? Okay. He testified today, and that's what he testified to today. I'm going to draw your attention to line 132.
Make your computer easier to use.
Okay,
Page,
sorry.
that's all right, document 47, line 132. Henry never told you what Richter told you, correct? On line 132. At that point, comma, Cadet Henry left, he went to court, and Sergeant Jaramillo, sworn certified law enforcement officer, walked in right as we were walking out, and he said, Sarge, because we agreed we need to talk to Sarge Jaramillo.
That's Officer Richter saying her and Manarino agreed to talk to Sergeant Jaramillo based on Henry's statement to notify her chain of command.
So this occurred at the academy?
No, this probably appeared to happen down at the courthouse.
Exactly. Thank you.
No, wait, hold on. Reading this, it says, at this point, Cadet Henry left and he went to court, which maybe he left the academy at that point.
They went to the academy on Monday.
But on Monday, he came in Monday, late because he had a child issue, and his kid was in the hospital or something like that, and so he was only there on Monday. He actually notified them on Tuesday
Right.
of the situation.
So you're saying that at that point,
What I'm saying is, at this point, the way I'm reading this, and if I recall correctly, is they were at the academy, Henry notified them at the academy, then was sent down to go, because they probably PT'd that morning, and was dressed out, told them about it, sent down to go to the courthouse to go do the court stuff, and that's when the officers notified Sergeant Jaramillo there at the academy about what had happened and gone through.
okay, take a minute and think about that. Did Henry tell you that Monday morning before court, he was at the academy and told someone at the academy? Take a minute, I don't want to trick you out. don't
No,
wanna
I
trick you.
think on Monday, he told Trujillo at the courthouse,
Right,
because he had to come in late, so he didn't go to the academy on Monday.
he told the academy on Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay, so where did he see Sergeant Jaramillo?
He didn't. This is Officer Richter saying that she saw Sergeant Jaramillo come into the office or whatever it is, and they notified him because her and Manarino got notified of this situation. And they couldn't do anything and act upon it because they're an officer, so they had to notify their chain of command. So Jaramillo comes in to do it, because what I'm guessing has happened, you've been to the academy, you know how they have
Right.
their common area where they can talk with the instructors, and then they also have their offices, but it's all pretty much open. The way I recall that is that he was there at the academy, finally decided he was going to come forth what he believed was his allegations, talked to them about it. They said, go to court.
Withdraw the question, because flip the page. Everything that was related to Sergeant Jaramillo came from Richter and Manarino.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so they got the information from Henry, they sent him on his way, said, go to court, go to your class, and they talked with Jaramillo about the situation
was that on Tuesday or Monday?
on Tuesday.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Monday,
Thank you.
nobody knew anything about it on Monday
Right.
except for
That was
Trujillo.
my understanding, all right. So then you talked to Joe Manarino,
Yes.
who was with Richter,
Yeah.
and Manarino tells you that he remembers Henry telling him, who's the man? No vulgarity, no obscenity. Correct?
He didn't use it during his statement, no.
All right. Let me back up a second and go through some of this. Do you want to take a break?
I'd like to try and finish with Sergeants involved.
Sure,
and take a
excellent,
break.
okay. So, help me understand, or help us understand, what an early warning system, early warning detection or early warning input is, and whether Greer was ever part of that early warning system. Did you discover that?
I didn't, because it would have no bearing on anything I had to do with the case. I would never look into that. I would never find out. The early warning system, or whatever we've changed it to, because we use different acronyms for that, is a system that documents uses of force. You use a baton, you use a taser, you use empty hand strike, but it gets documented as a use of force. So we create a use of force form that gets submitted, that goes through the proper chain of sergeants, lieutenants, commanders, all review it, they sign off, and then they send it down, and it gets tracked in a database. And it's changed, and so I'm not accurate up onto what it is, because we have like a new SOP that's coming through right now, and we have an old one. But I think if you get 5 of them, and it also includes if you get sued with a tort claim, and I think there's something else, there's a couple of things that come through with it. If you get so many of those, 3, 5, whatever the number is, then you get notified, hey, you have this. Now, all that means is that the supervisor has to look at it and say, okay, we're aware that this is happening, you're justified on these, we're aware that you're using a bunch. Now, if there's some unjustified ones or something like that comes up, then it may direct for more training or something else that may come up on it. But the idea behind it is to notify that if a certain officer is using use of force like continuously, and it's like a weekly thing, and then they get hit and flagged right away, is that they need to be able to watch these officers and make sure that it's not a pattern of behavior that this is happening. Or if it's, sometimes when you are in the southeast with the quote-unquote war zone, so you might be more inclined to be more of a hands-on use of force type individual than maybe when you're around the 1001 area where there's just...
1001?
1001, yes. An area that is less crime, where you're not having as many interactions with people. I mean, it takes a whole scope of things into context. So with the situation of him being on the early warning system, I don't know if he was. Has he ever been up? I couldn't tell you that. I can just tell you if there's a use of force and it was documented, it goes as a mark on it. Once you hit the threshold, the chain of command gets notified.
Fair enough, good description. Did you do any background on Greer's prior history, if any, on use of force?
No. My policy when I deal with these cases is the incident at hand to deal with that individual, to give them the most fair, unbiased situation that I possibly can to deal with what is happening at that time.
Now, the early intervention system, is it restricted to 1 year back? Do you know? If you don't know, that's fine.
I don't
Okay,
know
cool.
how, I don't remember how
All right.
how it works.
Give me 1 second, we'll pass the witness, I think. The redness to the face that you may or may not have seen on the prisoner transport video, can you tell how it got there?
No.
When you watched the video from the motel and saw what you saw, I guess how many minutes or seconds would that video
Oh gosh.
ballpark it? It wasn't very long, was it?
No, that's like maybe a 5-minute video, or at least the portion that was provided to me through state police and stuff is a very small amount. And like I said, it looks like it comes from almost the very beginning of Central, where it's Central and Charleston is where it is, and it looks like it's at the front entrance. And this happened 20 parking spots down in a corner area, so the view on it was, I mean, you just have basically an aerial view where the individual's on there no bigger than your thumbnail type distance-wise.
And it clearly did not, wasn't in a position to depict where Martell was described as seated.
No, you could tell that there was something happening on the other side of the dumpster wall, is where it also, because everybody emerged from there, and you can see the surrounding area, so you know what's happening behind there. But in the totality of it, you had no idea what was happening on the other side of the wall based on that video.
All right, I'll pass the witness.
Just a couple quick questions. Is Mr. Officer Henry consistent in his statements that Officer Greer punched Adrian Martell in the head twice and in the ribs twice?
Yes.
Do the recordings of the officers correlate with Officer Henry's statement about going live?
It appears that they turn on very close in the time frame. I believe the way I was able to document it was maybe 20 seconds, and in the way I documented that could be based on powering up the battery pack itself, or plugging back in the cord to let it boot up, to starting it, and having maybe their stuff on right away, or having when it came on. So yeah, it was very close together.
Both videos are consistent in the fact that they're missing the bulk of the encounter with Adrian Martell.
Yes.
And during the transport of Adrian, can you hear what he's saying in the back of the unit?
It was very muffled. I couldn't, at least when I listened to it, I don't remember hearing any specific words, because I believe I would have documented or quoted something if it had any pertinent information to what this regarded. I don't remember hearing anything in general. I don't remember documenting anything in that.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Mr. Giovanni?
Just one. Did you ever, why didn't you ask the recruit, why didn't he take steps to stop this, what he saw?
I believe he made the statement that he did not feel comfortable stepping in a position he was and not being armed to interfere with Officer Greer and his action to it, because he did not know where it would lead to or what would happen in that situation. He says he made some kind of statement to that generality, but he was asked, did you intervene or something to that effect? And he said, I wanted to, but I didn't feel I could because of the situation I was in.
Okay, thanks.
I have one question. Sergeant Sambala, going back to your interview with Officer Roush.
Yes, sir.
The call previous where the alleged airplane incident occurred, did you question Officer Roush about that?
I did.
What did you learn from that?
I learned that Officer Roush had the same story as Cadet Henry did about the interaction, that they made interaction with an individual. When asked specifically, did Officer Greer wrench on this guy's arm to get him to stand up? Officer, I don't remember, I was in my car running the individual. Did Officer Greer have this individual put his arms out and go do that? I don't see him doing that. And he made the comment that he never saw that happen. And he didn't see the allegations of what Cadet Henry would describe as misconduct. He said he didn't see those. He said, yes, we did show up, we did talk to an individual, we did go to start rescue, and then they code 4 rescue because they didn't
They
want...
what with the phone?
Code 4, I'm sorry, it just means that they told him not to show up on the call, and that stuff was all documented on the call itself. So as for that interaction, Officer Greer said, I don't remember ever being on that call. Officer Roush and Henry said, yeah, he was there, and they were the ones, Henry and Greer were dealing with that individual, and Roush ran the subject. So he had said that. But yeah, he said he never witnessed anything of that sort.
Mr.
I just have a follow-up on your...
Sure, go ahead.
On that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm at your interview with Officer Roush, and line 354, Roush tells you, in response to a question, do you remember Officer Greer helping him up though? I don't remember Officer Greer touching him. This is Roush, lines 371. I don't remember Officer Greer commanding him to get up. I don't remember Cadet Henry commanding him to get up or touching him.
Correct. That was...
Do you recall Greer making the statement, this is how you get somebody up? No, I don't remember that, putting a gooseneck on the guy. Not that he was in his car to the sea, but that he does not remember that happening. Do you remember, is that more accurate a statement?
Yes, in here he said he doesn't remember.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Granado, anything else?
No further questions.
Okay, gentlemen, can this witness be
You
excused?
may.
Sergeant, thank you for your testimony and for up here.
Yes.
No problem. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? Off the record.